It's crawling out!
Guys, if you're still watching, don't scroll away, because this final part will make you believe that true power doesn't come from magic, but from kindness itself. Stay until the end to understand how Amina changed the entire fate of little Toby. The whole family embraced Toby in overwhelming joy. The boy who had lived in silence all his life was finally able to say, "Mama, Papa." His very first words cut through the darkness of the DGL curse like a beam of light. Idayami looked at Amina, his eyes red yet shining with gratitude. "Because of you, my son can finally hear the world." Toby's mother took Amina's hands and whispered, "You didn't just save my grandchild. You saved the heart of this entire family." And when Toby ran into Amina's arms, calling her softly, "Amina," she broke down in tears. Tears of happiness, of courage, of a pure heart powerful enough to shatter the darkness. There are curses in life that don't come from demons, but from coldness, hatred, and greed. But there are also spells that require no charms at all, just a kind heart, a person brave enough to stand up when everyone else is afraid. Amina wasn't wealthy, she wasn't powerful, yet she became the light that broke the curse. Life sometimes changes because of one small act of kindness from one small, ordinary person. If today's story touched your heart, please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more meaningful, thrilling, and inspiring tales like this. Every single subscription gives me the strength to continue telling beautiful stories about humanity and life. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the story of Toby and Amina. Wishing you a peaceful day, and never forget, sometimes one small act from you can be a miracle for someone else. The billionaire Idayami's mansion was always as busy as a golden beehive. Footsteps of butlers, the laughter of visiting guests, the constant hum of air conditioners day and night, everything blended into a symphony that never stopped. But all those sounds died the moment they reached the ebony door at the end of the hallway, where young Toby lived. Inside that room, the world had no sound, no wind slipping through the curtains, no faint clink of metal when a maid placed a glass on the table, no soft sigh from his mother as she looked at her son and wondered how far God intended to test her family. Since the day he was born, Toby had never heard a breath, a voice, a single note. Doctors said he was perfectly healthy, no physical issues. His ears were clear, his auditory nerves intact. They concluded a strange case, but certainly not physiological. But the family's traditional priest said something that sent shivers through the entire household. DGL had sealed the child's senses. A living centipede lay inside his ear, blocking the gift destiny had given him. From that day on, Toby's mother, Lara, sat by his bedside every night, eyes full of despair. Some nights she cried until the pillow was soaked, but Toby never heard it. He only felt the rhythm of her heartbeat through her hand on his chest. A world without sound, yet full of vibrations. Idayami, the wealthiest man in Ikoyi, refused to believe in curses. He believed in international hospitals, top professors, advanced machines. He spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on tests, but every result came back the same. Nothing was wrong. No explanation for the silence. The house began to split into two beliefs. One in science, the other in something older, darker. Lara whispered prayers every day. Idayami remained silent, and Toby, he watched the world with wide, sad eyes, as if he were living at the bottom of a giant pool where every sound was swallowed above the surface. Then, on a bright sunny day, someone new entered the mansion. Her name was Amina Young, gentle-faced, with bright eyes that seemed to see through secrets people tried to hide. She came to work as a helper, a small role in a home as large as Idayami's, but no one knew her presence would change everything. Amina met Toby one afternoon. She opened the door and saw him sitting alone by the window, stacking wooden blocks into a silent tower. Sunlight lit his hair, but he remained like a shadow. She didn't say hello. She didn't wave or raise her voice like the others. She simply sat beside him, picked up another block, and placed it on the top of his tower. Toby turned to look at her. He didn't smile, but something shifted in his eyes, a small spark, real and fragile. Like the first moment he wasn't being observed, but understood. In the days that followed, Amina visited him faithfully. She played with him using balls, paper, eyes, and patience. No words needed, no sound required, only presence, and something unbelievable happened. Toby began to laugh. Silent laughter, but enough to make Lara weep with joy. But happiness didn't last long. One evening, while Amina cleaned Toby's room before bedtime, she heard or rather sensed something strange. The room carried a faint earthy smell, like damp soil from an underground burrow. She leaned over Toby. He slept soundly, breathing steady. But when her fingers brushed the hair behind his ear, she saw it. A tiny movement, like a thread twitching. Amina froze. She leaned closer, heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst. And under the dim golden glow of the bedside lamp, she saw it clearly. A thin, black leg poked out from deep inside Toby's ear, then retreated. Amina staggered back, hands trembling. She remembered the stories her grandmother used to tell, stories people mocked as superstition. But this was no superstition. Not when the creature was alive, hiding inside a child's ear. Someone called her name from the hallway. Amina jolted, stood up quickly, trying to steady her breath. But when she looked back at Toby, she knew she had just witnessed the truth the family feared to face. DGL was real, and the curse was alive inside the boy. Amina pressed a hand to her chest, inhaling deeply as fear sliced through her like cold lightning. But beneath the fear rose a fierce determination she didn't understand. She looked at sleeping Toby, his face peaceful and heartbreakingly innocent. You can't live in silence forever. I won't let that happen. In the stillness of the room, Amina reached toward the edge of his ear, toward the darkness that hid the secret of the curse. A secret she knew one day she would have to face. Amina cared for Toby deeply, not out of pity, not out of reluctant kindness. It was something natural, profound, like she had known him in some distant lifetime. Inside that silent room, she created a private language just for the two of them. Hand signs, facial expressions, stories told through eyes and gestures. Toby always sat close to her, watching her lips move, trying to read meaning from the shapes they formed. Whenever she smiled, he smiled, not because he heard anything, but because he could feel her joy. But there was one thing that always broke Amina's heart. No matter how she tapped the table, bounced a ball on the floor, or even called his name right in front of him, Toby never reacted, never flinched, never turned his head, not even the slightest twitch. One night, as Amina brushed his hair before bed, Toby sat quietly on the chair, legs swinging gently out of habit. The warm yellow lamp cast a soft glow over his dark, silky hair. Amina ran the brush through it slowly, until rustle, a sound so faint, so impossibly small that anyone else would have missed it. If she hadn't leaned so close, if she weren't so sensitive, she might have thought it was just her imagination. Amina froze. She blinked, tilted her head. Rustle, rustle, clearer this time. Not hair brushing, not air from the AC. It was the sound of something tiny moving inside his ear. Amina inhaled sharply, heart pounding. She leaned closer to Toby's left ear, eyes widening. Toby looked up at her, confused by her sudden tension. Toby, hold still for a moment, okay? She whispered, knowing he couldn't hear her. Her voice trembled anyway. She brushed his hair aside, gently pulled his earlobe to get a clearer look. And then, in the split second when the lamp's light reflected off the delicate skin of his ear, she saw it. Something black, long, thin like a thread but jointed, moving quickly, retreating deeper inside. Amina jerked back, hand flying to her mouth to stifle a scream. No, 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 her breath broke. She looked again, but the thing had already vanished, as if it had never existed. Goosebumps swept across her arms. A cold shiver ran down her spine. She pressed a hand to her chest, fighting to steady her breathing, but her mind spun. Her heart plummeted like falling through a bottomless pit. She remembered the stories her grandmother told her, stories people mocked as superstition about dark Yoruba spellcasters, about DGL, living centipede threads smaller than a toothpick, capable of crawling into a child's ear and hiding there like a parasitic spirit. They fed on hearing. They consumed the part of a child's soul that understood sound, and they would never leave unless pulled out by hand. Amina placed a shaky hand on Tabi's head, forcing a smile to reassure him. But inside, her heart was spiraling in panic. She brought her finger close to his ear, not touching, just observing. Toby closed his eyes, trusting her completely. Then he tick, a faint scraping sound, like tiny scales rubbing against flesh from inside the ear. Oh my God! Amina jolted back, her hands trembling as if she had a fever. She wanted to scream. She wanted to call the adults. She wanted to run out of the room right that instant. But Toby looked up at her, those wide, gentle eyes, silent eyes, unaware of the horror living inside his own body. And that look broke her. Anyone else would have run. Anyone else would have panicked. But Amina, the girl who sensed his loneliness the moment she met him, couldn't abandon him. A bead of sweat trickled down her temple. She knew what she saw wasn't a hallucination, not a stray hair, not a shadow, not a trick of the light. It was a creature, a living thing, inside the ear of a 7-year-old boy robbed of his hearing. Toby touched her hand gently, asking, "What's wrong?" Amina held his small hand tightly. Her heart ached. "Toby, there's something inside your ear. I promise I'll help you. I promise." Even if she had to confront the curse everyone in this mansion feared too much to name, even if the thing inside him wasn't something ordinary humans would dare touch. Amina looked toward the mirror in the room. The reflection staring back at her was small, trembling, but her eyes had changed. They held resolve. She understood that this moment, right here, was the beginning of a path she could never turn away from. A path not only to help him hear again, but to save the soul trapped inside him. Amina swallowed hard and brought her hand toward his ear once more, a silent oath forming inside her. "I'm going to pull it out, no matter what." The next morning, Lagos sunlight stretched across the rooftops like a sheet of golden silk. Amina walked quickly through the narrow alley behind the mansion, her heart still gripped by the cold terror from the night before. Her footsteps echoed softly, but in her mind she heard only one thing, that faint rustling, like a fingernail brushing paper, coming from the ear of a child. From Tabi's ear. Her hand tightened around the thin scarf she carried. She was on her way to see someone everyone in the district respected and feared. Mama Thalani, once the most powerful priestess in Ogun, now living a quiet, secluded life. The old wooden door swung open before Amina could even knock. The old woman appeared, silver hair falling loosely over her shoulders, eyes so deep it felt like they could read a person's soul. "I knew you would come," she said, her raspy voice echoing like earth drums. "Fear has been clinging to you since last night." Amina's breath caught. She stepped into the room filled with the scent of herbs, smoke drifting upward like wandering spirits. "Mama Thalani," Amina began, her voice unsteady. She had to inhale 3 times before she could continue. "I saw something in Tabi's ear. I think it's alive." The old woman froze mid-pour. A heavy silence settled, the kind that comes before a storm. "What did you see?" Amina closed her eyes. The memory of last night flashed sharp and vivid. Long, black, thin like a thread, but it had legs. It pulled itself deeper into his ear like a spirit afraid of the light. Mama Thalani set the teacup down with a hard clack, her face drained of color. Then she spoke a word that struck Amina straight in the chest. DGL. The name itself felt like a blade in the air. The old woman leaned forward, her gaze sharp as a knife's edge. "Do you know what you witnessed?" Amina shook her head slowly. "That was a cursed centipede, not a creature of nature, not an insect. It is a being summoned from the dark to seal away a child's God-given senses." Amina felt her legs weaken. "Oh God," the old woman continued, "if the DGL lives in the child's ear too long, the ear will close forever." She tapped her finger on the table. "A door shut, that will never open again." Amina clutched her chest. Toby appeared in her mind, his silent smile, his eyes begging to hear the world he'd been denied. Is there a way to save him?" she whispered. Mama Thalani looked straight into her soul. There is. Then she emphasized each word like a command from the ancestors. Pull it out with the hand of someone whose heart is pure. A sudden gust blew through the window, making the candle flame tremble. Amina shook her head in panic. With my hands. I can't possibly. No one else can. The old woman cut in. No tool can touch the cursed centipede without driving it deeper. No priest can pull it out if their heart carries shadows. Only someone whose soul DGL cannot read can do it. Amina stood frozen. Mama Thalani studied her for a long moment, then finally said, "And that someone is you." Her words swirled with the rising smoke as if the spirits themselves confirmed it. Amina trembled. "But you, why Toby? Why him?" The old woman's face sank into a solemn expression, as if touching a secret woven into the universe. "Because someone does not want the child to reach his destiny." She looked at Amina intensely. "The boy carries a future so bright. Someone lurking in the shadows has tried to extinguish it since he was born." Amina's heartbeat thundered in her chest. A face surfaced in her mind, sharp, cold, unsettling, and watching Toby in a strange way, calculating, not loving. Amina felt her breathing turn heavy and uneven. Mama Thalani placed a firm hand on her shoulder. DGL did not enter his ear by accident. It was sent by someone living inside that house. Amina took a shaky step backward. No, this couldn't be true. But the chill across her spine said the old woman wasn't wrong. Do you know who did it?" Amina asked. Mama Thalani closed her eyes, shaking her head slowly. "I do not see their face, but I see darkness wrapped around them." Then she opened her eyes again, sharp, certain. "You've seen that darkness before, haven't you?" Amina clenched her trembling hands. She didn't answer, but the silence of the room spoke for her. The old woman continued, "You must be careful. That person surely knows the curse is not complete, and if they realize you've discovered the truth," her voice dropped, deep and foreboding, "you will be the next one they silence." Amina swallowed hard. Outside the window, a black crow landed on the roof and let out a hoarse cry, a chilling omen. Mama Thalani took both of Amina's hands, her tone grave. "Go. Return to the boy. If the DGL still lives, Toby's time is slipping away." Amina looked down at her hands, small, shaking, unarmed, powerless. But inside her chest, a cold, burning resolve began to rise. She would fight. She would save Toby, even if it meant facing a curse, or the human who created it. Amina stepped out of the wooden house. The blinding sun did nothing to chase away the darkness clinging to her thoughts. She knew one thing. When she returned to the mansion, she would not only face the creature hiding in the boy's ear, but also the person standing behind the shadow, and that person was very, very close. Midnight. Toby's room lay drowned in deep blue darkness, the only light a trembling slice of moon filtering through the window and stretching across the wooden floor like fragile silver bars. Everything was so silent Amina could hear her own heartbeat, even though she had grown used to the quiet surrounding the little boy. Toby slept in her arms, his head resting on her chest like a small bird seeking shelter. Amina stroked his soft hair, silently praying the nightmare from last night would not return. But the silence didn't last. Toby suddenly jolted, as if an invisible blade had stabbed deep inside his head. His small body twisted, his hands clamping tightly round his left ear, his face scrunched with pain. Amina shot upright, horrified. "Toby, what's wrong?" The words escaped her instinctively, though she knew he couldn't hear them. His mouth opened, but no sound came out, only trembling, breaths, and eyes filled with panic, begging for help. For the first time, Toby was not a child living in peaceful silence. He was hurting, truly hurting. Amina's trembling hand flipped on the lamp. Warm yellow light spilled across the room, and what she saw next struck her like a stone straight to the heart. A centipede leg, thin, black, hooked like a tiny claw, protruded from Toby's ear, wiggled once, then retreated into the darkness inside him. Amina let out a horrified gasp. "Oh God, it's alive. It's really alive." Her whole body went cold. The lamp flickered in her hand, casting warped shadows across the wall, twisting shapes that seemed to mock human helplessness. And in that moment, Mama Thalani's words echoed louder than any church bell. If it burrows deeper, no one will ever save the child. Amina pulled Toby close, feeling his small frame shaking like a fragile boat caught in a violent storm. He buried his face into her shoulder, gripping her shirt so tightly he tore the fabric. Another rustling sound. Cold, wet, alive. The creature was moving, crawling deeper. Amina's heart clenched. There was no time, no alternative, no one else who could do this. She laid Toby gently on the bed, his eyes glistened with tears, his lips trembling. Unable to cry aloud as silence so heartbreaking it made Amina want to run away with him and never look back. But she didn't. She grabbed a small cloth and wrapped it around her hand, hoping it would lessen the horror of touching the creature. But then she stopped. Mama Thalani's voice came back. Bare hands only. Only a pure heart can frighten it into letting go. Amina swallowed hard. Her hand felt ice cold. She brought her fingers close to Toby's ear. He flinched, but his eyes showed absolute trust. A trust so pure it felt like Amina was standing on the edge between life and death. "It's okay," she whispered, voice cracking. "I'm right here." She gently pulled his ear downwards. The lamp's beam illuminated the dark tunnel inside, a darkness thick enough to swallow everything. She saw movement. The cursed centipede was coming out. This time it didn't hide immediately. It extended further, long enough for Amina to see its slick black body, thin as a reed, legs quivering like something born from nightmares. Toby tensed in pain, eyes full of despair. Amina had no time left to be afraid. She brought her thumb and forefinger close, slow and precise, as if dismantling a bomb. Suddenly the centipede jerked violently and darted back inside. Toby arched upward, mouth open in a soundless scream. Amina felt her heart freefall. She knew, if it went any deeper, if she hesitated even a few seconds, Toby would lose everything. "No," she shouted, her voice ringing with a force meant for destiny itself. "You will not take his sound." She placed her fingers right at the edge of the ear canal, a move no doctor would ever dare. And this time, when the creature peeked out again, she grabbed it. A sickening sensation shot straight into her spine. The tiny creature pulled back with brutal strength, hard enough that Amina thought it might drag her entire arm into the boy's skull. It thrashed, it writhed, it tried to slither back into the darkness. Amina screamed, a raw, primal sound, like a mother fighting for her child. "Let go! You will not claim this boy," she pulled. The creature slid out, inch by inch, its scraping sound like metal claws dragging against stone. Toby's body shook, then suddenly went limp, too much pain to even react. Amina's hands numbed, but she did not stop. Then pop, a wet, tearing sound, like something being ripped from living flesh. Amina fell back onto the bed, clutching the long, black, writhing creature still squirming violently in her hand. She stared at it, a thing so tiny, so impossibly small, yet capable of stealing the hearing of a child's soul. Amina gasped for breath. She had pulled DGL out, but when she looked at Toby, he lay still and moving, eyes closed. Amina felt her face drain of color. "No, no, Toby, open your eyes, Toby." She shook him gently. He slowly opened them. Confusion, fear, weakness. Then, from outside the window, the wind blew, making the bamboo wind chime let out a soft clang. Toby flinched. Amina froze, not because he moved, but because for the first time in his life, Toby's eyes widened in response to sound. He heard it. Amina covered her mouth with a trembling hand as tears spilled down her cheeks. But the joy had no chance to settle. A shadow appeared in the hallway. Quiet, slow, but carrying a cold presence sharp enough to slice through the room. Someone had been watching, and that person did not want Toby saved. The room glowed faintly under the trembling light of the bedside lamp, flickering like Amina's own heartbeat. The air felt thick, heavy, as if the darkness itself were holding its breath while watching her. Toby lay on the bed, lips pressed tight, both hands covering his left ear as if trying to stop the pain burrowing deeper into his small skull. Amina slid a pillow under his head, her hands gentle, as though she were touching the wing of an injured bird. "Please just hold on a little longer," she whispered, voice cracking. "I'll save you, no matter what it costs." Toby looked at her with tear-filled eyes, trembling. frightened, but trusting her completely. That trust tightened Amina's heart painfully. She switched on a small flashlight and moved it close to his ear. The moment the light swept across the ear canal, Amina froze. A black centipede streaked with a faint red sheen was curled inside his ear like a ribbon crafted by demons. Its tiny legs were burrowed deep into the tender flesh. Each twitch made the skin inside Tabby's ear ripple, like a silent scream trapped in a place no one could hear. It wasn't just long. It was alive with power, a creature that didn't belong to this world. Amina swallowed hard. Her hands trembled so violently she had to rest them on her lap for a few seconds just to steady herself. Okay, she breathed, though she wasn't sure if she was calming Toby or herself. She brought two fingers closer. The moment her fingertips neared the warm air of Toby's ear, the centipede twisted violently. It felt her heat, and it reacted. It spun, anchoring itself deeper, its needle-like legs stabbing straight into the inner skin. Toby jerked, mouth opening in a scream no one could hear. Amina's heart lurched, but she didn't pull back. If she hesitated now, the creature would disappear deeper into places no one could reach. No, she whispered sharply, voice shaking but fierce. You will not hurt him. She reached deeper, ignoring every instinct screaming at her to recoil, ignoring the horror creeping up her spine. Her fingers touched the creature's body, cold, slick, soft like wax. But each leg where it gripped the flesh was hard as metal. The centipede writhed, twisting violently, desperate to escape back into the shadows. Toby trembled, tears streaming along his temples. I'm sorry, Amina sobbed. But her grip on the creature's head did not loosen. A force resisted her so strong she had to use all her strength to hold on. Then as she pulled, a sharp, slicing sound cut through the air, like fate itself tearing open. The creature shot out of Tabby's ear, writhing madly in her hand like a breath from the underworld. It was twice as long as she expected, its body coiling, giving off a faint, cursed smell like damp earth turned sour. Amina recoiled and threw it onto the floor. The centipede writhed violently, then went still, the red shine fading like dying embers. The room fell into such deep silence she could hear her heartbeat pounding, each beat a tremor. Then she turned back to Toby. He lay motionless, breathing shallow but steady, eyes closed. Amina leaned close, fear washing over her. Toby, can you hear me? Toby, please. Her voice cracked into pieces, as if her heart were breaking with every word. Then, from outside the window, a breeze brushed past the hanging bamboo chime. Clink. A soft, thin sound, delicate yet clear in the night. Toby's eyes fluttered open. He turned his head toward the sound. Amina froze, not because he moved, but because, for the first time in his life, he reacted to sound. Her hand flew to her mouth, trembling uncontrollably, and then he looked at her. His lips quivered. He opened his mouth. A tiny sound emerged, hoarse, weak, but unmistakable. Amy, nah. Amina collapsed beside the bed, tears spilling freely, not out of fear, not out of exhaustion, but because the first sound he ever heard, and the first word he ever spoke, was her name. She cupped his cheek with shaking hands. I'm here. I'm right here. Toby, you can hear now. He gazed at her, his eyes shining with a new light, the light of a soul stepping out of 7 years of darkness. But the moment of joy shattered as a cold shiver slid down Amina's spine. A figure stood at the doorway. No footsteps, no voice. Just watching, eyes sharp as blades, black as the curse itself. The eyes of the one who placed DGL inside Tabby's ear. Amina turned her head slowly, tears still on her lashes, and her face drained of color. Danger had awakened. That morning, the first rays of Lagos sunlight fell like thin golden ribbons, glittering across the marble floor. Amina stood by the doorway, still shaken from the long night she had spent wrestling with the DGL curse. The scent of early morning wind mixed with damp wood made everything feel unreal, as if the horrors of last night had been nothing more than a sweat-soaked dream. Then a small voice rose through the quiet. Ma? The fragile sound fluttered like a newborn bird testing its wings. Tabby's mother collapsed to her knees instantly, tears bursting from her eyes. Billionaire spun around, and the usual sharpness in his gaze softened. shaking like a man witnessing a miracle with his own eyes. "Toby, did you just call your mother?" His voice trembled between fear and hope. Toby looked up at them, a glow of recognition in his eyes. He reached his hand toward his father, and this time, not with gestures, but with an actual word. "Pa," just 2 syllables. But it was enough to make the entire room explode with emotion. Idayami dropped to the floor and gathered his son into his arms, holding him tightly against his chest. A grown man's sobs filled the room, raw, broken, unrestrained. In that moment, Amina didn't dare step forward. She stood quietly at the doorframe, hands clasped, emotions swirling inside her like a storm with no name. She didn't want praise. She didn't want reward. She only wanted the boy to live fully, to hear birdsong, to hear running water, to call the names of those he loved. Then Toby's mother turned to her, eyes red but shining with the brightness of someone who had just seen light after years of darkness. "Amina, come here." Amina stepped forward gently, afraid to disturb the sacredness of the moment. She placed the DGL centipede, now curled and lifeless looking, onto a cloth. The moment Toby's mother saw it, she froze. Her hand trembled as though she had touched a piece of a nightmare. "That is DGL, a Yoruba curse bred to seal a child's senses." Her voice was quiet but sharp, cold as wind rustling through dead leaves. Amina bent to pick up the cloth that had slipped from her hand. On the corner of it was a symbol drawn in charcoal, rough but unmistakable, the mark of a sorcerer who had once served in this household. A man expelled only a month ago for stealing. He came back. Toby's mother whispered the words, pressing her hand to her mouth to stifle a sob. He wanted revenge. He cursed an innocent child. Idayami rose to his feet abruptly, a dark shadow crossing his gaze. The calm, calculating businessman vanished, replaced by a father who had nearly lost his son. But he didn't know. He turned to Amina, his voice deepened, heavy with emotion. "That you would be the one to break his curse." Amina lowered her head as tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't know what to say. All she remembered was the agony of the night before, the centipede's legs hooked into Toby's skin, the way he writhed in silent pain, and how she, someone with nothing but her bare hands, had reached into that darkness and pulled the creature out. All she could whisper was, "I couldn't let him suffer anymore." For a moment, the entire room seemed wrapped in a gentle light, not sunlight, but gratitude. Toby's mother walked forward and took Amina's hand. "You saved my son. I owe you for the rest of my life." Idayami nodded, his gaze firm. "Someone like you cannot be bought with money, but we will honor you with our hearts." Amina smiled, a small, soft smile, warm like a spark in the cold Harmattan night. Then Toby, with ears that could finally hear, wobbled toward her and wrapped his small arms around her leg. He looked up, eyes shining with new life, and said, "Amy, nah." Amina broke down in tears, not the tears of fear or exhaustion, but of pure, overwhelming joy, because the first laughter of Toby's life rang out seconds later, bright, clear, echoing through the grand house, and every shadow felt like it dissolved. The DGL lying on the cloth shriveled further, turning brittle like dust, its power gone. That day, Idayami declared before the entire household that from this moment on, Amina was no longer a maid. "You are part of this family now." The one who brought sound back into our home outside. The Lega sun rose higher, illuminating every corner of the mansion. A new chapter had opened, one without curses, without fear, only the sound of life, of a child's laughter, and of a brave heart that changed the destiny of an entire family.